Okay, so the next stage in our theme development process is going to be to sort out our menu, which we're going to replace with a dynamic menu which we can manage through the admin. We're also then going to look at the sidebar area and the footer, the content for which in both cases we're going to be able to manage through widgets, also through the back office. So if we take a look at the admin at the moment, under appearance you'll notice there's no mention of menus, which we can sort out by firstly kicking off with a new file which we're going to call functions.php, a standard file name which WordPress is going to be expecting. And the first thing we're going to do is register, like so, register a nav menu. Now we can register multiple menus here as well. In our case we only need one, but it's not a bad habit to get into to form this like an array, like so. Let's see, get our PHP tags closed off, like so. Okay, now these register nav menu arrays, again if you check the codex in WordPress, codex I meant, we can have a look, and this function will expect various things. We're going to be placing an array just like this which has various key value pairs, so let's just do that straight away instead of faffing around in there. We're going to give it a key which in our case we're going to call primary, that acts as a sort of unique identifier, and then we're going to give it a name which will be displayed for us in order to sort of see things a bit more clearly. We can of course then register multiple navigations in this way, but we only need the one. So having saved that, also it's worth noting just to make sure there's no trailing white space on any of your PHP tags or anywhere in your functions PHP, because that will trip things over. I'm going to save that, and in our admin now, if I refresh, you'll notice under the appearance we have a menus option, and under this menus page we can build menus which we can then slot into our template. So that's the next stage. If I refresh, nothing will have changed because we haven't actually replaced this with what's necessary in order to pull in that dynamic menu. So the current content for that menu is within our header PHP. This is it here, and you'll just have to excuse me while I copy and paste something I've already prepared. Within our nav here we're going to get rid of the 16 columns and all the containing UL, and I'm going to paste in this WP nav menu function, which again accepts an array of values. For a kickoff, it will expect you to tell it which menu it's going to pull in here. So under menu we're going to refer to our menu primary navigation, which is what we called it when we registered it in functions PHP, and then there are all kinds of optional extras you can add in this array, including the containing element, which we're going to use as a div because that's what we pulled out, and we're going to add to that div the classes of 16 columns. So that's what it's going to do. It's going to pull in whatever menu we determine in the back office, and it's going to slot it into a div with a class of 16 columns. So I'll save that, and you can see that it's been replaced with this quite spectacular menu. Now if we have a look in our menu in the back office, there's very little to choose from, which is why it's throwing out that default content there. What would be a good idea at this point is for me to pull in some actual content for our blog. I have prepared some, so I'm going to go to Tools, and I'm now going to import some WordPress content. Firstly, I'll need to actually install the importer as a plugin. So I'll just do that now. 1 second. Activate that plugin, and it will now allow me to use that plugin to import some WordPress content. I've prepared some previously, so if I choose a file, you can see here, excuse the mess on my desktop there, this is an XML file which has all kinds of page, post and author details, and it will also pull in the attachments from my local host. I'll provide this XML file for you as well, so you'll be able to import things in exactly the same way, but you won't be able to pull the attachments from my copy of WordPress because I'm running it locally, and I probably have deleted it by the time you're playing with this. So we'll submit that, and with any luck it will now have pulled in a whole load of posts, so that's good. Now, having a look on our front end, you can now see that it's pulled in the menu that I've already prepared. If we take a look at the menu, this is what will have been pulled in for you. It's a combination of pages and categories for posts in a couple of different levels. So that allows us to demonstrate the drop down, and it actually gives us some dynamic content. Now once again, once we shrink things down, it disappears because of the way our styling works. We're expecting a drop down menu to appear there, and of course it doesn't yet because well, we've gotten rid of all our JavaScript, and we're going to have to replace that at some point with a useful little plugin. Now the next stage then, having sorted out our menu, is the widgets, the matter of widgets. Now they're registered in a very similar way to our menu there, so I'm now going to just drop that down, and I have a load of different let's see, if I'm going to just copy and paste a load of these, but to just get you used to the syntax a little bit, we need to register a sidebar. Again, this is going to expect an array or one of those. Okay, and there's the end of our PHP. So in a very similar way to above, organize it as you see fit. We can now put in key value pairs in a very similar fashion there. We need to give each of our sidebars a name. So we'll call this particular one, which we're working on right now, we're going to call home sidebar. Typing is all over the place at the moment, excuse me. That's all that's necessary for the time being, but there are once again all kinds of values that you can throw into this array, optional parameters to improve things. For example, I'm just going to copy and paste this because I've already prepared it. You can determine what appears before each widget that turns up in that sidebar. And I happen to want, let's see, we're working for example on this sidebar here. I'm going to have each of these sections, which you can see with an H4 header. You can see I'm going to have each of these placed within a div. Because if we check our source files in our sidebar, you'll see that each of these within our aside has a div. For example, our search form, that's an easy example. There's our search form, and it's within a div. It has a header, and then it has its content. Same goes for this sponsors thing. We have a div. It has a unique identifier, but it also is fairly generic. It has its header in an H4, and then it has its content. So in each case, in this home sidebar, I want each widget to be placed within a div with a class of sub and clearfix, and then this little nubbit of code here is going to churn out an identifier dependent on the content of that widget. In many cases that's going to be a text widget for the purposes of this demonstration, so this is then going to churn out widget text. After the widget, then therefore I'm going to need a closing div tag, and you will also be able to determine the markup around the title of that widget. So we want our header and our h4 to wrap up each title in our widgets on that home page sidebar. So I'm going to save that, and then of course let's just check that by having a look at our widgets, and you'll notice that this little home sidebar has appeared now in our admin and is available for us to start throwing widgets in. What we now need to do is place that widget in our aside here. So having registered it in functions, we now need to stick it in our aside. So in order to do that, we need to use this little snippet here. We need to call a dynamic sidebar, and then we use the reference that we refer to it as in our functions.php. So that's fairly straightforward. Now, having done that, it's going to pull in any widgets that I place, and it's going to place them there. So for the sake of this demonstration, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use text bits and bobs. This first one I'm going to call subscribe, and I'm just going to paste in the content here. Looks a little bit of a mess. If I save it, you'll notice that some of the styling doesn't quite match up, and that's because in our theme, you'll see here I have my first two divs. We gave each of these divs a unique identifier. In this case it was called subscribe, and it was using that class that we were able to style things a little bit more uniquely. This obviously doesn't have that class, so what I could do instead, should just point out what it does have, as I explained earlier, is a widget text class. That's being generated, but it will be generated identically for all text widgets, so that doesn't really help us out. What I'm going to do is just add another surrounding div, which is just going to style things for us for the time being. Obviously you'll be able to use these widgets to fill in whatever content it is you want. Alright, that's a good start. So let's just add a few more things just to sort of get things presentable, and then we can properly clean up our file here. So I'll get rid of that subscribe for a kickoff. We've got our search. I may as well just plop that in as well. You're more likely to want to use an existing search plugin and style it yourself. But in order to keep the style true to our theme, I'm just going to use that for the time being. Our sponsors there, let's use another text widget. And all the while you'll notice that the header is being automatically placed for us. That's going to need another wrapper around it called sponsors in order to style those properly. So I'll take those, I'll just delete that, paste that in, save. And of course we then have we have those hellish PHP tags. It's not going to pass those for us, so let's just get rid of that, and I'm going to replace that with WP content. Let's have a look here. Now, obviously you don't want to be doing this in a live environment, but this is for the sake of presentation, so just bear with me. Content themes, what did I call it? I called it magazine theme, and that was it. So that's going to be the path that I give to our images in this case. Save that, and there they are, which is good. Next one, what have we got? Those popular tag, the tags I'm not going to bother with because the tabs are rather because they've actually been ditched from Skeleton framework, so we'll just ignore those and get rid of those. Magazine news, we can put that one in as well if you like. Let's see here. Excellent. Those tags are still hanging about. Oh, I didn't save it, that's why. Categories, we can use we may as well use a proper available widget for what's available to us. Let's see, we've got categories, which is provided for us by WordPress. We'll display that as a drop down because we don't want a colossal great list there. And then we want another text. Again, we could use some kind of video plugin. So feel free to experiment with that if you want. Video of the week. Paste that in there. And with any luck, we've cleaned up our sidebar file quite spectacularly. It just consists of an aside and the dynamic sidebar, which we have entirely filled thanks to widgets. So I'll refresh that one last time, and there we have our, let's see, do with showing the hierarchy in that as well. That was an option, wasn't it? Show hierarchy, save. There we go. There we go. So that's all managed through widgets, and it's all responsive or at least adaptive, just as it should be. So now we can repeat a similar process, although I'll try not to be quite so long-winded about it, for our footer elements. I'm just going to copy and paste them directly because you don't want to watch me faffing around with typing those. So we'll paste these in at the end of our functions.php. Be sure to trim off any trailing white space, etc. And you can see I've just pasted in 4 additional sidebars. We have 4 of them, each one given a name, section 1, 2, 3 and 4, to go clearly in our footer. In the first case, we don't want any title markup being added. In the case of the remaining three, we want a similar h4 tags with a header tag as well. So I'll save that, and upon refreshing, you'll notice that we have suddenly another few sections here. So I can once again use a text widget. I don't need a title on that. If I open up my footer, I'm going to place this text here. Let's see, like so. That's going to be, we can even get rid of these paragraphs if you like, and have WordPress add those automatically for us, just to clean things up, like so. Save that. And of course, we do then need to add each one to our template files. So I'll switch that one out, and it's not called home sidebar, this one, it's called footer section 1. Okay, same applies for Twitter. That's going to be number 2, like so. We're going to need our recent posts, which we're going to slot in with number 3, and our Flickr feed, which we'll put in with number 4. So we'll save that. So the contents vanished. We had what did we have? We had Twitter. Now there are all kinds of plugins you can use. I already have some which I can just slot in. I don't know which ones I should particularly advise you to use. I know that the ones I'm using here work very well in my case, so it's very easy to just go to plugins, to add new, and then go searching for plugins which you can use, such as let's see, which one am I going to use, for example? Twitter widget, and tons of things come up, and you can just install them directly here, or you can go to the respective sites, grab them, download them, and add them to your plugins folder, whatever you want. Some plugins may well conflict with other plugins, so that's something to certainly to keep an eye on. I'm now going to just show you the ones which I've used, and I'm going to place those manually into my plugins folder. Let's see if I can find the correct ones. So I had my my Twitter widget. For that one I used this DP Twitter widget here. I had a Flickr stream widget, and for that I used this one. I'll put you to the URLs at the bottom of the tutorial, so don't worry about this for the time being. And that's all I'm going to point you to for the time being. A responsive select menu, that one's worth pointing out. This is a Theme Forest author who's made this, and I'll point you to his website afterwards. And I'll leave you with the Flex slider for the time being, because that's something we're going to look at a little bit later on. So now if we look at our installed plugins in our admin, you'll notice that those folders I just threw into our plugin directory have appeared. I'm going to, firstly we're going to have a look at our footer content. So I want to activate our Flickr stream, and I want to activate our Twitter widget. Let's go to our widgets now. And in the second widget section, sidebar section, I wanted my Twitter widget. So I'll throw that in there. I only want 3 updates, and I want to use Invato Web Design. Okay, so I'll save that. Section 3, I was going to use recent news articles, wasn't it? Recent posts. What did I actually call them? I can't remember. I've deleted it now. Recent posts, and I'll show 5 of those, that's fine. And in my 4th, I wanted the Flickr photo stream thing. Call that Flickr, just like that. I wanted 6. I don't need any of that. Let's see, if I just take a look at the source, let's see, how did I do it? I'm going to open that with Coda. And if I go to it was just a div it was added to, wasn't it? And if I open, I'm getting all tangled up with me folders here, sorry. It was in the JavaScript that, okay. See how I did it. Obviously I needed the ID, and there were 6 of them. Okay. So I don't particularly need a list. I don't need these list items either. This is the markup that's going to be spewed out. I can have, that's a very handy thing to have, the anchor around the image, but just the image tags themselves should be useful enough. Doesn't seem to have asked me, I need a user, okay. User group ID, there we go. Tags before list, okay, and I'll save that. So that should churn out 6 photos in a very similar fashion to the one we already have. So I'll refresh the page, and it's going to start taking longer to load because it's pulling in various bits and bobs. Let's see. That doesn't look exactly as it did do, and there's going to be a reason for that. It's going to be based on the markup, isn't it? Let's see. These images are... The header looks fine. Let's just take a look at what was ordinarily churned out in the HTML. Oh, it was because of the div class flicker around it. So actually that would have been handy to have. So if we go into our widgets, before the list, div class flicker. They're obviously we obviously used that to style things. Save that. Try again. Let's see if we have some kind of familiar styling to our images. That's a lot better. They're not big enough, so it's probably worth just altering some of the styling. We've got our Twitter feed coming in perfectly acceptably there. Our recent posts, so all looks good. So let's see, we have a max width of 46, but I also need to include a minimum width, obviously. For some reason that's not working as it should. So I'll go to layout CSS line 318. That's here, all the way down to 318. And as well as a max width, I'm going to include a min width. We'll save that. Refresh. Oh, I didn't even need to refresh. What am I doing? Sorry. And there you can see it's filling up the parent container much more effectively now. In all cases. All right. Excellent. Next stage was the menu, because as I said, it's still disappearing because we didn't have our JavaScript swapping things out for an unordered list on smaller resolutions, smaller viewport sizes. So as I mentioned, we had our responsive select menu by a guy called Chris, who is a Theme Forest author, as I mentioned, and you can go to his site 7spark.com there. I'm going to activate it, and now if we look under, let's see, where was it, appearance, I can see responsive select is now an option for us, and it gives you a couple of things to change. Let's see, I want go to be what's written as our default option. I'd like to select the currently selected item, so it reflects which page you're on. That's useful. I don't want it to be swapping out at resolutions below 960. We were actually using 768, I believe. So I'm going to save all those. And now refreshing the page. We'll do nothing at this size, but if I shrink things down, as you can see, it's automatically swapped out any generated menus for a little drop down. Brilliant! It's done all the hard work for us. So we don't need any of those JavaScript things that we had buried in our source files last time. We've managed to do the whole thing using plugins and widgets and bits and bobs that WordPress kindly provided for us. Excellent. Time now for another cup of tea or coffee, whatever you want. Fanta even. Go for Fanta.